Exactly. Exactly. Okay, like right now I have the 24/7 on, and that's just to pick up the audio feed, and then I can monitor the chats from here. But our main focus is the radio, and I've redirected the domains. Like infiniteplane.live goes to the audio. All right. And this is just a test. I'm going to be testing this out periodically, and I'm going to get people acclimated to the audio first approach. We'll see who shows up. You know who was live last night? Chief Crow. Did you catch it? I think I saw you there. Well, I had a premonition he was going to be live. I had no reason to think so, but he was. I'm going to definitely maybe what I want to start structuring things around the 24/7 audio, which means I'm going to be taking things like live audio recordings like from Chief Crow and stuff, and I'll mix them in along with the audiobooks. So audiobooks, music, and I'm okay. Right now we're on Facebook, YouTube, Discord, and Twitch. And I don't know how good the audio is out there, but if anybody, in fact, this is the thing. This is the link. Infiniteplane.live will take you to the audio where you might have a better sound, and you can also join us in Discord if you want to say anything, although nobody can hear you except me. But I'm mostly testing it now. We'll see. We'll get some feedback. Let people know how the audio is, because the audio is super clean on the audio stream. If you go to infiniteplane.live, I just don't know how good it's going to be on the video. I'm mostly using the video just for the chat function. In fact, I'll just put that in the notes here. If the audio is choppy, go to, and of course the audio at infiniteplane.live will continue on after this live stream. Even if I cut off, it just reverts back to that. And I'm setting it up to play. Okay, no feedback on audio. Well, what I mean by feedback is I mean like any comments, any critical reviews on audio. Not copy here. Okay, maybe it won't be. I've been thinking about this all morning. I've been trying to figure out how can I make this work, and I actually got a fortune cookie that said something about. Let's see if I can find it. Lately, my fortune cookies have all been very relevant, and one of them said something about, and I don't want to misquote it. I don't want to misquote my mystic helpful messages from beyond, from the cookie god. But basically, it said something about like, uh, I really don't want to misquote it. It's just too pithy, and I'll screw it up, and you'll miss it. So I'm gonna find my fortune cookies here. Oh, here it is. Education is the ability to meet life's situations. And I was thinking about this today. I'm like, well, everything's kind of upside down, but I should be able to work it out with the 24/7 stream with this basic technology. If they could take what they had in 1969 and fake a moon landing. So here I've done it. We have a 24/7 audio stream at infiniteplane.live, not going to go down. It's loaded with archives ready to play, recent archives, archives that are throwbacks. It's never going to end. And now I have found a way to merge the chat function. The chat function will just be managed by my iPhone, which I have on a dollar store mic stand, and it's perfectly situated next to the laptop. The only difference is we don't have any video, but what difference does that make? Anything that we're referenced, you can look at on any of the platforms that I'm getting info from. Like, for example, most of our intel comes from the Discord server. And the easiest way to get in is just to join at Patreon for $1 a month, 30-day free trial. Gets you in. Happy St. Patrick's Day, I guess I should say. In fact, let me go ahead and hit record. And I'm hoping that these notifications aren't killing the audio. It is St. Patrick's Day, and the way I'm celebrating it is by watching Leprechaun 3 on Sci-Fi TV. I can't believe what utter garbage people used to watch. Actually, I can, because I look at what utter garbage they watch right now. But this is exceptionally bad. It's almost offensive. It's like, wait, it's St. Patrick's Day, so you're going to have some stereotype, this leprechaun character going around committing grisly murders while rhyming in limericks that are barely funny. I watched part 4 because I thought it might be good. I think it had Snoop Dogg. It was called Leprechaun in the Hood. Utter garbage, just beyond cringe. Jenna Lovecraft Reeve says Leprechaun in the Hood is the best. Well, I have to watch it again because when I first watched it, I was more of a film connoisseur and weed wasn't legal. I'm pretty sure I'd like it if I watched it today. But now that I'm looking at it, I mean, it does have a charm to it as far as the special effects. I mean, I guess it's meant to be funny. I just don't know if I'm laughing with the director or at. But anyway, Leprechaun is on, and it's pretty evident to me. Oh, that's so disgusting. That the special effects that they used to use, like I'm watching this person who's contaminated with like a leprechaun virus, and he looks like his skin is covered in veins and he's morphing. It looks better, or rather, it looks more realistic. More the shock I feel is far more visceral than if it were CGI. And I think what they've done is they've used CGI to replace organic special effects, specifically to dumb the public down visually for this new age. And this new age is, of course, the age of, well, PSYOP entertainment as a way of governing minds. All right, just a heads up here, if anybody wants to get into any of these conversations, since I can't take phone calls right now, I found a workaround. The workaround is jump into the Discord server South Pole chat. That's one place. And I am recording all of this in Discord. What I mean by that is if you come in and you want to chat, it's already automatically recording, just fair warning. I mean, we are working on a more structured 24/7 stream. Sorry, I need some eye wash. Every time I look up at the screen, because it's a big flat screen, I just see the most disgusting stuff. Okay, I'm looking at this guy. I think he was bitten by the leprechaun. His face is all yellow and covered in veins, and his tongue is sticking out. And he's like spraying some liquid out of his mouth. Like, this is on mainstream TV to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Again, Leprechaun 3. Unbelievably sick. Yeah, I think movies used to be a lot grosser. And a lot of it, I'd say, I know I'm not even an SJW, but I have to say it's very sexist as well. Your mama says people are hypnotized by video games. Oh yeah, they're hypnotized by the TV. It's not specifically the TV. Now he's got green liquid coming out of his mouth. Again, I'm watching the Sci-Fi Channel. And what the public thinks is science, for the most part, is indeed fiction. Joined by One Step Too Far. Thanks for joining. This morning I was listening to Brian Staveley. He had a video and it was fascinating. It's like 30 minutes long, where clearly he is recruiting. I mean, I used to refer to Staveley as the Mandela Effect Greta, just because he's such a staunch Mandela Effect believer, and he really resents the people that don't believe it, because if you don't believe it, you're holding everybody back. That's always the story with these things, with the religions. Nobody's saved until everybody's saved. Nobody's awake until everybody's awake. And in this case, they can't escape this prison universe and unlock the mystery so that they can manipulate reality until everybody believes. Like, they're trying to convert people. And that's why they're so mad at non-believers. They call us sheep. They say we're asleep. I've been called a God blocker. Joined by Spirit Jordan from France. Thank you for joining. Tominoid 2, green fountain at the White House. Brando-like idiocracy. Yes, it's beyond that. Well, continuing here, I'm listening to this live stream where Brian Stavely is calling out MacToon's followers. Now, I don't mean calling him out in a bad way. He's wooing them. The video title is Mandela Curious from McToon's You Are Not Alone. And the premise of this video is that he was on McToon, who's an anti-flat earth guy, and they're debating the flat earth topic. But he starts listing off all these Mandela effects, and apparently a lot of people were very impressed because the spinning ball cult believers love the Mandela effect. It's like miracles for the people who are believers in scientism. It makes sense to them. So apparently, many of the people on this live stream were very sympathetic to the Mandela effect, even though they hate the flat earth topic. Here are some quotes. I know some of you are curious. I know by the reactions in the chat that I was blowing people's minds. It's hard to admit, but I'm here. And I know you're curious. Like he goes full-blown Mandela effect groomer, saying specifically, and this is where I thought it got a little culty. He said, it says 19 minutes into the video, Mandela curious. Quote, you can keep it to yourself if this stuff doesn't go over well with your friends. In other words, you can keep it between you and me. Don't have to tell your friends, don't have to tell your family that you're Mandela affected. This is cult recruitment 101. Mandela effect grooming. Now, I can't decide if he's a cynical genius or a true believer, and if this is just another religion, which is what I'm leaning towards now. Because if he was just a cynical genius, then I'd also have to throw in an incredibly persuasive actor, because I'm totally buying it. He is Mandoozled. And if you are, and you're not comfortable coming out as Mandoozled among your friends, and you're a listener to McToon or otherwise, you can just email him at ricefoot@gmail.com, and you have full confidentiality. It's like your personal Mandela effect psychologist. Tomanoid2 says Russian jet slap deserves an Oscar too. Yeah, the drama is so weak these days. A balloon, a drone, stuff we never see. Ali Goering says Stavely never came across Patrick Jordan's theory of continuum. It's about biomedical conditions but can be applied conceptually when it comes to no one is saved until everyone is saved. Interesting. I'm with you on that though, because this also pertains to the vaccine. The world will be at risk as long as one person carries the thing. In other words, nobody's saved or nobody's perfectly safe until everybody is safe. And this is intentional. This is part of the group dynamic. So the group is always growing. The group is actually parasiting off of the sane people until everybody's crazy. Same thing, the whole zombie genre really started with Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. It later became Omega Man, The Last Man on Earth, Vincent Price, more recently Will Smith. But I Am Legend is about a world overtaken by a vampire bat disease, basically vampire zombies. And this is early, so they're not clearly defined as separate entities, but the last human on Earth is able to survive against this world gone vampire. And he turns his home into a fortress, and he spends his nights fighting off these things. He spends his days fortifying the house, foraging for food, and hunting them. And he kills a great number of them. Well, finally, towards the end, he begins doing experiments on them, trying to save them, trying to find out different ways to kill them. He injects them with garlic. He begins doing experiments on them. And one of them manages to convince him that she's human, that she hasn't turned. And they fall in love. And then he gets turned over. And kind of a spoiler alert if you haven't read it, but the book came out like 100 years ago. You had time. At the very end, he decides, does he want to be executed in front of all these vampires, or does he want to take the suicide pills that the woman that tricked him gave him, which he does. But the purpose of the book, or the title rather, I Am Legend, is that among vampires, he was their Dracula. Like Dracula is a legend. Everyone's afraid of this vampire. Well, in this case, the last human is essentially the worst predator and the most feared enemy of the vampire. So he dies as a legend. Interesting story, but that's the basis for a lot of this vampire stuff. But yeah, he was just one. One individual was ruining the world for everyone. And that's where we are now. Commenter says, can't save everyone. People save themselves. No saviors on flat earth. Yeah, I don't want to be saved. I want to be saved from the people that want to do the saving. That's the true mind virus. And, I've been speaking about this concept of the virus of the mind and how they've applied the virus model to everything. Now, apparently, even banking. If your friend's broke, stay away from him because you'll go broke too. If that bank goes down, the next bank's going to go down. Everything is a chain reaction. Everything has fallout. But I've been talking about this virus of the mind book and the concept of the mind virus, which is fallacious, pseudoscience at best, but it was recently popularized by Elon Musk because that's his job, to popularize topics the elite need in your head. He's just a purveyor of mind viruses. He's like ground zero, patient zero for a lot of bad ideas. He's a pitchman for transhumanism, which really just means post-human. But this book, Virus of the Mind, Richard Brody is the creator of Microsoft Word, which is a huge clue to this whole thing. Microsoft, mind viruses, Microsoft, Bill Gates, virus mediation. Richard Brody created Microsoft Word, and Word, we're talking about mind viruses, words. Conflating it with computer viruses. Again, computer virus, even that is just stealing the language of epidemiology to apply it to the computer. They've been doing this for a long time because ultimately it's about mind war, info war. And they control the words that we use to describe things to get us to understand concepts in ways they want us to understand them. There's a lot of suggestion built into all of this. But getting to my point here, the Virus of the Mind book, I'm saying it's very fallacious, but it does have a chapter in there. I believe it's called How to Start a Cult or How to Start Your Own Religion. And the title's somewhat facetious, but he's mostly serious, that you can create a superorganism. You can create a cult if it's structured properly, and it does spread somewhat like an epidemic. In fact, I was in a company when I first got into sales. It was like vector marketing, and it was about selling knives, kitchen knives. But the way that it worked was you would make a list of everybody that you knew, and you would ask every one of them, once you gave them a knife presentation, for a list of people they know who might be interested. And the idea of this company, and it was very exploitative because they knew that most people would fail after one or two sales. They would get sympathy sales for their family. They'd sell to their grandmother or their parents. And of course, that all kicks back to the trainer who recruits you. And he's the one who makes all the money off all these people trying to spread this virus. So you go around to these various houses, you do the knife presentation, you exhaust your personal book of friends, your social circle is exhausted, and then all of their social circles are exhausted. Basically, you're the super spreader for the product. And you're trying to create additional super spreaders. And then you have to set up to do boosters. Every once in a while, you go sharpen their knives. But my point is, there is something to this idea of using the model of the virus to explaining some phenomenon, but it only works with NPCs. NPCs can catch mind viruses. This is something I've been thinking lately, that the mind virus is basically an idea taken in without a mental immune system interfering or filtering it. So you have the regular virus, gets past your immune system. Well, what if you have a weak immune system? What if you have a weak mental immune system? Well, then, of course, you believe anything. You're gullible. And the masses have been conditioned to be gullible. They're all believers. They're not knowers. They're low information believers. They don't even need a lot of evidence, or rather, they don't need evidence. They just need a lot of people nodding their heads to believe. They don't have that mental immune system. They have what in Hot Skull, the Netflix series, called ARDS, acquired reasoning deficiency syndrome, or what I call mind aids. The NPC masses do have this. And in Hot Skull, they had to wear headphones to cover their ears so they wouldn't catch mind viruses. And what I'm correlating here is this. Those of you who still critically think, who can see the world stage as such, you have a functioning bullshit detector. You have a mental immune system. You can't catch mind viruses, but they can. The NPCs are programmed. In other words, their mental immune systems have been removed. The masses have ARDS intentionally, by design, by tradition. It's part of the culture. And if you don't, well, you're a mind virus super spreader and you didn't even know it. You can literally infect them. That's why they have to constantly deplatform this channel. They know what we can do. Rocco Calzone says NPCs and New Guy caught the mind virus and gained consciousness. Oh, I think it's called Free Guy. I wrote a review about Free Guy. I highly recommend it. It's one of these Ryan Reynolds movies. It has an interesting subtext or two. There's a few things in that movie to take out of it. I actually think it's about Free Gaia, and Gaia being the global AI alliance. And if you look at the basic story of Free Guy, it's an NPC, and it's got a Truman Show like subtext to it as well. But it's like an NPC who is in this simulation world, and he begins to wake up after he has an experience that causes a spark in his mind. He sees a woman that he falls in love with, and that's part of the story. Begins to wake him up, kind of like Trinity in the Matrix. Trinity kisses Neo when he's dead for 72 seconds, brings him back to life. There's something here about the energetic exchange it's pointing out that gives life, that sparks awareness. And in Free Guy, it is about an NPC in a simulation suddenly becoming sentient. And it has a story in it that everybody in the simulation is an NPC because they're enslaved. They're enslaved by the CEO that runs the place. They're not allowed to have free will. And of course, Free Guy starts to free himself. In many ways, the movie's like They Live, where the guy puts on the glasses and he can see the Matrix for what it is. It even has sunglasses. It even has another character, just like in They Live. You have the white protagonist, and he has a big fight with the other character who's black, who won't put on the glasses. They have the same exact dynamic in Free Guy. The security guard doesn't want to see it how it is, doesn't want to be free. But what you find here is that when he's able to invalidate the system and reset it, and it has this reset theme, when they can get rid of the CEO that's controlling it, the evil CEO always, which I think is a reference to our system, because what is Gaia? This global AI alliance is from the World Economic Forum. They're totally anti-capitalist. This is why they demonize the CEO. But in Free Guy, when he overthrows the CEO, big bad boss, what happens? Everybody's free. All the NPCs are set free. All the NPCs are now able to live as they want. They're free. He frees them all. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what we're looking at. The media turns everybody into NPCs. And if you were to break this monolithic control, you would have this Free Guy situation. And another interesting tie-in here is that what invalidates the system is he finds out there's more land. There's more land beyond this free city. And this is what breaks the system. But it's a very layered movie. There's a few other elements to it. Like one of them is how does he break free? And a lot of it has to do with breaking his pattern. Like every day he wears the same thing. He slightly changes his pattern. He takes different turns. By breaking his pattern, he becomes more sentient of himself as a choice maker. Because what defines an NPC? They don't make choices. They follow the script. When he becomes a playing character and makes choices for himself, he becomes autonomous and he breaks free of the program. And then, of course, the island, I think, is a fascinating thing because it invalidates the system. I mentioned this yesterday. They found some islands somewhere off of Japan, like 7 new islands just came out of nowhere. And I'm pretty sure I figured out what happened to that 57 tons of PPE tossed into the ocean in 2020, 2021. Got a new shop sale. Thank you, Tristan Wagner. Appreciate that very much. If you go to timosmond.art, A-R-T, I am listing art as I can. I think I'm going to move over to watercolor for the time being. I'm kind of mobile, and acrylic is just not all that convenient. All right, we are joined by P. Trippa, bringing the popcorn to throw at the screen. If I had some, I would right now. I'm looking at the screen. There's a burning leprechaun and a leprechaun-infected character who's got a wicked unibrow and sideburns, and he's vomiting green stuff on the ground. Again, they have this on TV because it's St. Patrick's Day. Ollie Goering says, it's suspicious that Rihanna has a makeup brand called Fenty, like fentanyl. That is interesting. Yeah, all these new islands near Japan, I'm suspecting that they're all COVID islands. Okay, a few things. Last night, Chief Crow was live. If you missed it, I'll find a link and I'll share it. And I'll put it out in the next newsletter. I'm working on the 24/7 stream. I'm going to be adding chapters from the new audiobooks. There's a few new audiobooks out. Secret Religion of the Elite, 2nd edition, Uber Death. And these audiobooks are on iTunes and Audible, but I'm allowed to use up to, I think, 10 minutes or 2 chapters in my promotional. So I'll be putting audiobooks and commercials I'm recording. And a lot of my commercials that I'm going to record for Infinite Plane Radio have been written with the assistance of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is my new personal assistant. But I'm formalizing Infinite Plane Radio with a structure and a schedule. 24/7 is back on, and I have found a workaround, of course. Most of you already know I have weak Wi-Fi, but that hasn't stopped us because now I'm streaming primarily from audio. And the video is being picked up by my iPhone separately, but I'm able to make it all work. And the 24/7 will continue if you're listening at infiniteplane.live. After the video goes down, the audio will continue. Infiniteplane.live has all of the links. The Real Meme Man has joined us, says Newt. So has the HBC, and we're from Twitch and DLive here. Okay, we've been talking about the Mandela effect thing, and my main point was this. I was listening to the argumentation because we have a documentary that we put a lot of time and energy and work into, and it just needs to be finalized. And I'm going to record it, but I want to hire a professional cinematographer. I think it deserves that. But I've been studying this, and I've been listening to his argumentation. I see what he's doing, but his argument is this. He can read off a list of his top 300 so-called Mandela effects. And if 5 or 10 of them appeal to you, then you're affected. To me, it's not all that rigorous. And my issue I have with this is that if one of them is wrong or one doesn't work, it should be invalid. Or if there's any contradictions at all. But they allow limitless contradictions. Like, I remember this, I don't. Or I just had this effect. It's like, what are you talking about? We live in the same universe, and that's what they're destroying. I think the Mandela effect is in complete contradiction to objective reality. And when I call things fake, I'm not calling reality fake. I'm calling the description of reality by liars fake. There's a lot of distortion on the filter that goes over everybody's minds. I'm not a reality distorter. Joined by Pete W. says Mandoodle. The Mandoozle effect. Yeah, the Mandoozle effect is a fascinating phenomenon, and the documentary goes into the different explanations. And of course, the true believers are not going to want to believe in retroactive interference. They're not going to want to believe in suggestibility or in the fallibility of their own recall. And here's the trick. And I don't know. This is why I say I don't know if some of these big time Mandela effect pushers are cynical geniuses or if they're true believers, because some of their tactics are just it's very cynical if they don't really believe this stuff. This notion of telling somebody what do you think, or what do you remember, A or B? Well, just saying what do you remember, A or B, puts A and B on an equal plane. And if B never existed and never would have come to mind had you not referenced it, it never would have come to mind. This is retroactive interference. A good example is Jif and Jiffy peanut butter. It's like, okay, well, there's a few reasons you could invalidate Jiffy. It wouldn't fit on the label. But moreover, if you ask someone, what do you remember as this peanut butter brand? If they actually have a legitimate memory, they'll tell you it's Jif. But if you ask them, is it Jif, Jiffy, Skiffy? If you give them a list, then you're contaminating their recollection. And when you say something, they imagine it, wittingly or not, and it becomes part of the mental repertoire. That's false memory. That's how you implant false memories. And they don't want to believe in false memories. That's the one explanation they will not accept. They'll accept CERN before this. But the fact is, it's been documented. There's research that more than like 75% of the individuals wrongfully convicted are wrongfully convicted on the basis of faulty eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony is easily contaminated by the interrogators. They call this the interrogator bias. And if you're a Mandela effect believer and you don't want to acknowledge the effects of interrogator bias, retroactive interference, then you're just not being honest with yourself or your own operating system. And I think this is a great opportunity to learn. I saw this psychologist talking about how she had a poster made up where it had Bugs Bunny in Disneyland. Well, Bugs Bunny is Warner Brothers. He's never been in Disneyland. But if she had the poster up in the room, even if she didn't draw attention to it, and she were to inquire about someone's experiences with Disney and who they saw, people would recall Bugs Bunny. That's how it works. And I've been thinking about meteors lately. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's almost like Noah's Ark burst in the sky. Like Noah's Ark went to space because every day there's a different meteor coming down and its units of measurements are ascribed to like some sort of unit of animal, like 69 alligators wide. That's how wide this meteor is. Or this one is 560 elephants. A meteor the size of 3 giraffes. It's always just animals. But why would they do this? Why would they constantly put out articles where they're telling you about a object, a space rock, but then they associate it with animals? Well, because it's difficult to conceptualize a number, a numerical value. Oh, it's 105 meters wide. It's 13 meters wide. Like you can kind of picture it, but if you want to get someone to grasp scale, especially children who are being targeted with propaganda, you'd compare it to animals. And that was 69 American alligators. Now, why would they do this though? And this ties into this Mandela effect. The reason why they're doing this is they want these things to exist in your mind. Don't think of it. Try not to think of a meteor 69 alligators wide, or try not to think of a meteor that's the size of 3 elephants stacked on top of each other. When you put these ideas out there, you can't not think about it. They're seeding your mind with memes all the time. And they do this because now meteors are floating around in your inner space. They're not in outer space, but now they're in your inner space. And when they have a news story, oh, a meteor landed over here. Well, do those exist? You go through your mental catalog, and actually, according to your experience, you've processed a number of these events. Like, I think this is an example of suggestion. And I think the Mandela effectees are also doing the same. I've been seeing this phenomenon quite a lot. The transducers are exceptionally good at this. They're a perfect example of if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm talking about the transducer effect. They give their believers a group of tools, like a mask. Rather, it's a filter that has a skull on it. And you put this over somebody's face, and it'll tell you what they are. Or if their ring finger's too long, it means that they are the opposite of what they say. Like they have these rules, which are insane. But those are the diagnostic tools they use to determine if somebody is one of them. No different than the witch's hammer, the medieval handbook for hunting witches. If you were to read it now, you would probably laugh. Oh, someone has a mole, they're a witch, burn him. But, and that, in fact, funnily enough, that book was called The Witch's Hammer. And of course, anybody would be guilty of witchcraft by going through that book. Really no different than the diagnostic statistical manuals that they use to diagnose people with mental illness. Or go through a Dianetics, go through a Scientology audit and try to come out of it with no engrams. Go to confession and try to come out of it sinless. This is why I brought up the Mandela effect method of the shotgun approach, where they just read off like 1,000 of these effects until one of them gets you. And now you're one of them. All right, let me go through your comments. This is just a test for the most part. We've been live here for a little over half an hour. I got the audio encoder for my main computer, so we can now stream anytime live, primarily on audio, secondarily on video. But we have the active chat, and then importantly, the 24/7 is back on. So you just go to infiniteplane.live, and it will take you to any of the listening locations. So we've just moved a little bit. Instead of being primarily video, we're primarily audio, which is perfect. I needed to do this anyway. It'll help me structure everything. I've been doing a lot of work on organizing our reporting. Go to infiniteplane.media and click press room. And if you get into the Infinite Plane Radio Press Club, you can get involved in a lot of the stories that we're presently investigating and things that we want to look into. Rocco Calzone says McMandela effect. Oh yeah, Egg McMahon. The Egg McMahon effect. I'm the one who said they should call it the Ed McMahon effect, because most of the people who believe in this don't know who Nelson Mandela is. But very few of them even know who Ed McMahon is. It's the strangest thing. You got someone who's like, he's on TikTok. It's like, I remember Ed McMahon passing out money. And it's like, I don't even think your parents are old enough for that. Like, they don't have enough new effects. It's almost like it's only going to infect boomers. And I hate to use that term, but it has to do with the period of time during which one would have had these specific memories that they're claiming are wrong. I bet it's really easy to convert people. And I shouldn't even give this idea, but I remember David Weiss from Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole was going to nursing homes, and he was asking a lot of them if they were, if they had any recollection of having been taught about the earth being flat while in school, which is a ridiculous starting point for a conversation. It wouldn't make sense. You couldn't just swap that one thing out. It would be part of it, just doesn't make sense. But my point of it is, he's going to these nursing homes and he's talking to people who are like 100 years old. And he said, do you remember what you were taught in school when you were in second grade? It's like, I don't remember. But it was really easy for him to get people to agree. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I have some problems with the ethics of this. But is it any worse? Like, is it worse to convince somebody who's beyond a certain age? Is it any worse than just convincing the average person by tapping into a little back door, a mind hack? Because it is kind of a mind hack. To use NLP, suggestion, retroactive interference, interrogator bias, cult recruitment tactics, these are all mind hacking techniques, very unethical. That's why I used to refer to the Mandela effect pushers as, well, pushers, because it's almost like a drug. But it is something else. There's something else here, the cult aspect of it. The funny thing about cults is when people are in them, it forms a replacement family. They don't need the outside world. And they don't even need the central theme of their cult to be true anymore. It doesn't even matter. In fact, many cults will see criticism of their core beliefs as validation that they're actually on the right path. They love this. Cult leaders love this because then they can demagogue and they can act like a savior and point at the world as bad. It increases the levels of self-righteousness. But what Stavely was doing specifically was saying, I know your friends and family might not be cool with Mandela, but if you're Mandela curious, you can call me directly. He's wooing people. He's recruiting. PW says, Tim, congrats, you made 1,000 subs. Oh yeah, that was an old channel. I have a few old channels. The ones that have more than 1,000 subs are rare, but I have a few sock accounts. They usually get banned for like 3 months at a time. But I was happy to see that one was open again. But if you look, the official channel is at Infinite Plane Society, and it has like 400 subs, but it's growing. In fact, I will replay this live stream on the main channel after this. Let's go ahead and get back on track here. I plan to make a lot of these sock accounts grow much larger, but one of our main obstacles in the last couple of years has been mostly a very specific troll, but I think I have that situation under control. It'll be nice to look back at this stuff and not have to worry about it again. And last week, I actually doxed Flat Earth Reset. Pretty happy about that. Would have been nice if it had happened 2 or 3 years ago. But I knew it would happen eventually. Everybody slips. Nobody's anonymous. And it reminds me, I was watching this story today about how some stores are installing face scanning technology. That we're at this point where shoplifters have been such a plague on all these stores that many of them are shutting down, and others are looking at ways to make sure that they know who buys what, down to every item. They're taking away privacy on every level. And I think this is another example of problem, reaction, solution, where they allowed the shoplifting, the looting. They encourage it, they enable it, they decriminalize it. They did this on purpose. And I think this is all part of manufacturing outrage. So nobody complains when now everything is tracked. And I'm not 100% against that necessarily. Like right now, what's the big deal? Like people are like, oh, I don't care about my privacy. I have nothing to hide. Well, right now you don't. But maybe in the future you will. Or maybe in the future, we're going to be run by a bunch of climate goblins who are going to want to know everything that you buy because of its carbon footprint, because you're going to pay taxes on it. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why maybe you don't want Big Brother tracking everything, especially if Big Brother is a big climate troll. And the main agenda I see today from every news platform is agoraphobia. Planes are too dangerous, turbulent times for the airlines. Trains, they've all derailed, no trains left. Cars are now the next thing they're targeting. Cars are dangerous. These are not coincidental. It's all planned. The HBIC says, I think you're right about it being planned. Oh yeah, this is all structured. It's a controlled demolition. Look at the lexicon. Look at the words they use. They're like, oh, the fallout from the bank, or it's contagious. The bank collapse is contagious. If they're using fallout and contagious, it's because they're trying to get us to accept this chain reaction notion, like a nuclear, like two atoms. You split an atom, chain reaction, look what happens. Ohio was 100% a psyop, and it was a message that was being sent to us. Ohio is the heart of it all. America had a heart attack. Its arteries, aka the railways, are clogged. And it's all because of greed. And I'm watching CSNBC, and it's all about greed, American greed. And I mentioned this yesterday, but it's like I'm watching this show called American Greed about this guy named Joe Lowe, and he's at his 33rd birthday party, and Britney Spears jumps out of the cake, and he gets convicted of billions of dollars in fraud, and he looks a lot. In a few ways, the story looks a lot like the story of the financier of Getter, friends of Steve Bannon, also guilty of $1 billion in fraud. And I'm like, what are the odds that a left-wing platform would run a documentary about a character that parallels a story that's happening real time about one of their political enemies, this being Steve Bannon? This is just another example of what I would call concurrent programming. They do this all the time. Hillman Avenger says you have, oh yes, D-Live, we have 2 different accounts. One's got 3,000 subs, one's got like 1,000. And I'm going to try to maintain a position on all of these. And I believe I reanimated another one of my fallen YouTubes. Joined by JT33. Thank you for joining. I've been covering a lot today. Let me go through my notes. There have been so many interruptions. I'm very appreciative of everybody sticking with this because the think tank rolls on. And funnily enough, before everything fell apart, I just got about halfway through a book called Anti-Fragile. And I was coming to the realization that what defines Infinite Plane Society and the think tank is that it is an anti-fragile organization. As in, anti-fragile organizations are those that don't have to have a rigid form, and if it gets shut down, they get shut down. That would be fragile. What we have is something that can reassemble or it can adapt to changing conditions. And we have been changing, or rather, we have been maintaining a steady flow, but we've been adapting. Ever since the media decided, and it is monolithic, that they had to shut it all down. I mean, they have been putting us into a mental quarantine since we were born into one for sure, but the internet started breaking that. But they've been reinstituting a mental quarantine for a few years now. And I mentioned that movie Hot Skulls because it's actually about a mental quarantine. People are quarantined so they don't hear and catch mind viruses. Joined by thinks he's a penguin 101 33. Hillman Avenger says UK Gov may have jumped the shark with CBDC and 15-minute cities. People are walking away from their apathy. Right. I see nothing but ridicule leveled at those who think there's something not ominous or nefarious about 15-minute cities. Like, oh, you silly right-wing conspiracists. You're scared of a 15-minute city? What's wrong with you? Like, there's something wrong with us. Like, what are you afraid of? That the elite are going to manufacture some bogus idea to get you all to lock down and steal all your freedoms? Yeah, precisely that. Only this time it'll be permanent because climate change isn't just a rebranding of a seasonal flu. Climate change is this perpetual, never-ending condition. And really, as fake as it is, you could look at climate change and the public belief in it as a way of determining our mental climate, how brainwashed we are, how God-fearing we are as a society. And when I say God-fearing, I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about the false God construct that the elite have created so that we worship them by proxy. We fear them by proxy, and we do. Joined by Salty Siren with the burning heart emoji. Haven't seen that before. And the heart has been such an incredibly relevant symbol in the last few months. Remember, Damar Hamlin, suddenly died. The CPR thing, the lightning bolt over the heart, all connected. It's all symbolism. The Super Bowl this year, Rihanna was the heart. The heart is the goddess. The heart is the chalice. But the heart of America had the heart attack. That's what the train wreck was about. All right, let us continue. I'm going through my timosmond.blog. It's my Substack. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. I'm trying to put my most coherent ideas, things that we're developing, things we talk about, right there out front and center. I started a new section, IPR Press Club. Anytime any of us get any kind of media coverage or covering a story, I'm going to post it in the press section. Then I have Auto Hoaxology 101, which has to do with the methodology for mass media deconstruction, because we're not conspiracists. We are a captive audience to what seem to be evil alien entities, forcing everybody to watch bad science fiction to make them go crazy. In other words, we're living Mystery Science Theater 3000. But those of us here are able to maintain our sanity by throwing the popcorn at the screen. I said this in 2020. A lot of people were scared. They thought tanks were going to come over and take them out of their homes. I thought tanks were coming, but that they were just going to take the question marks off the keyboards. But so many people were scared. And one night I started a live stream. The title was Ammo or Popcorn. And that was the question. If you're reaching for the ammunition, you're of one frame of mind. If you're reaching for the popcorn, you're the other. And at that time, it wasn't obvious that it was all fake to a lot of people. A lot of people hadn't gone full-blown auto hoaxer. A lot of people were legitimately scared. but we weren't. I didn't invest in ammo. I invested in popcorn. In fact, I was even thinking maybe the IPS needs to have its own white label popcorn. Just got to come up with a label. Salty Siren says Mystery Babylon Theater, 33K. Yeah, that's actually, you're right. Mystery Babylon Theater is 100% what it is. I hadn't made that connection, but it is. I mean, our space age is the new age. And the new age, not replaced, but they syncretized Isis with this new goddess name of Babylon, the Scarlet Witch, the Red Witch. You'll see her represented in many different movies and films, but Babylon is the new name for the goddess that the elite secretly worship at the very top of the Illuminati dung heap. And the Super Bowl ritual was indeed Mystery Babylon fertility rite. One of the other symbols for the goddess is the rose. And this is interesting because, of course, the god is the cross, the goddess is the rose. Think of the Rosicrucians. The rose and the heart and the chalice are interchangeable in this context. The rose has long been synonymous with the goddess. My point is, I was talking about the symbolism at the Super Bowl Mystery Babylon fertility rite, where the goddess Babylon, Rihanna, who happens to have the Isis tattoo on her chest, she is in red, and that's the blood. That's the wine in the chalice. That's the blood of the heart. And she's surrounded by these dancers all dressed in white. And at first I thought they were dressed in PPE. I thought they stole the idea from me. Because a few months ago, I was trying to pitch the idea that we ought to start a fashion line, fashion PPE, like disposable PPE dance wear. You go to the club, you throw it away after. But I thought, wow, they stole our idea. But no, I realized here, you're looking at this fertility rite, and she's the goddess. She's even pregnant during the ritual. They have her up in this, they have her elevated on a platform, and it looks like the moon in the sky with the stars behind her. She descends. But of course, the dancers represent the male, she, the blood, the female. It's like the bread and the wine. Not hard to grasp the symbolism. The god and the goddess, Christ and the Magdalene. Well, one of the Grammy Award winning performers was Kendrick Lamar for his song called The Heart Part 5. Again, the heart reference. And the performance piece for that was dedicated to women's rights, specifically this Roe v. Wade thing. We're talking about abortion rights. In other words, the womb, which is the chalice, which is the symbol of the cup. And he dedicates this song, Heart Part 5, to women's rights while dressed up like Jesus. He's got a crown of thorns and he's dressed in white. All of the dancers are women and they're dressed in red. So you see, it's the reverse of the Super Bowl, but it's the same exact rite. Christ, of course, as a correspondence to this Babylon or Babylon and the beast, because we're looking at these syncretized gods and goddesses. But what we did see was essentially the Babylon working, is what you would call it. Super Babylon. All right, let me continue through your comments. Yes, we're live, P780. I didn't send out text notifications because this was an experiment, but now I know that it works. I'm going to start sending text notifications again. We're primarily live via audio. That's, we don't have anything on the screen, but this is how we ran the channel the first 3 or 4 months. And if it takes that long for me to get back into a headquarters where I have high-speed internet, then that's fine. It will work. Importantly, we have the 24/7 stream. Okay, we were talking about Mystery Babylon performed in our faces, Mystery Babylon Theater. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? That's a good question. I have a few ideas. One of the things I know for sure is this avatar concept is part of their religion, and that they worship their gods and goddesses, not as abstractions, but as actually having a presence, that these are beings that are summoned into the physical bodies of the idols that they worship. That's how it works. Hillman Avenger says, 15-minute cities are a thinly veiled attack on the poor, that's all. Yeah, you could look at it this way. Communism and environmentalism, its new mask, are both attacks on the poor while pretending to be defending the poor. These things are not really about saving who they claim to be saving. It's about removing the ladder of upward mobility for Gaia's sake. They don't need you to have money and property and all that. Like Al Gore, you think Al Gore wants to save the earth? No, he wants to own it. The Democrats don't want to save the planet. They want to own all of the property. They're not against property. They're against property in the hands of the poor. They love their property. We're run by oligarchs. And the 15-minute city concept is another attack on this American idea that we travel, we explore, manifest destiny. Let's go to space and populate other planets. Let's go mine Mars for oil. Nope, not going to happen. They want to go ahead and cut this off at its source. They want to kill the West before we go galactic. And the 15-minute city concept is the new ideal because they don't want to force you into a small area. They want you to learn to love your prison as they build it for you. That way they don't have to force you into it because you're conditioned to love it. And most people already are. One of the other subtexts to white noise, and even the psyop that followed, it has to do with travel. It has to do with this idea that the ideal vacation was you get with your nuclear family. Again, nuclear families are bad. You get in your station wagon, fill it up with dino juice. Again, that's bad. And drive across the country, the heart of America. Well, the heart of America, again, is Ohio. Now, National Lampoon's Family Vacation is about this family that drives across America. A lot of people watch that movie and they have a bit of nostalgia for this idea of when you're kids, you get in a family vehicle and you go somewhere. Well, they want to kill that. And the movie White Noise was based on National Lampoon's Family Vacation in part. And this is something that I noticed when I first watched it. And subsequently, several reviewers have made this connection, even the New York Times, that this was definitely based on the Griswolds, but it was taking them down. It was an attack on the Griswolds. No, you don't drive across the country anymore. This is not a sustainable way of life. That's why we had the train crash and the train derailment. Another thing about the train, we talk about symbols like the ship of state, Titanic. Titanic is a symbol of the West. Well, the movie Snowpiercer is another one of these movies about a closed system and about climate change in the future. And nobody realizes that they're all prisoners on this train and that the rich at the very front are eating the poor at the very back. Nobody knows it because nobody can get off the train. They're all trapped by the system, going in circles, and it's unsustainable. And they're all going to die in this political and economic system prison. But at the end, the train stops and everybody's free. My point is, the train is also used as a symbol of the ship of state, and it represents capitalism. And we need to stop this train if the world's going to survive, if we're going to be free, if the rich are going to stop eating the poor. And that's one of the meanings behind white noise and these train derailments. They're trying to say, look, this is the heart of America. This is what America's about. It cannot last. And why did the trains crash? Deregulation. Trump's fault. Same exact idea behind the fires, the PG&E fires. This is all LIHOP, let it happen on purpose, or PSYOP, totally fake. But they allow these things to happen or they engineer it, and it's all done for the political purpose of blaming the right. HG mentions the Trump cities. Oh, yes, the right wing has their great awakening, the left wing has their great reset. One has their 15-minute cities, Trump will have his Trump cities. Red pills are the right-wing version of the left's woke pill. Wokeism is something that's often attacked by the right, and it's not clearly defined for a lot of people. But red pill used to mean transcendence. It used to mean breaking mind control. But now red pill means you've absorbed the mind control of the political right. Wokeism is absorbing the mind control of the political left. Both of these are blue pills. They're just various ways of explaining the world stage and blaming the other side. But they have totally co-opted these things. And each side is being sold the same exact prison as an ideal. Commenter says, I sometimes think a lens flare can be a lens flare. I also think all illumination could be a lens flare except for the sun. Salty Siren says, I'm creating a video to break down each planet and their symbolism, the magnetic signature, lens, flare. Well, okay, the planets and their symbolism. Many people think, well, that's archaic. Why would we even care? We don't need those anymore. We have electric lights. Well, the fact of it is, the billionaires and trillionaires that run this place are obsessed with astrology. JP Morgan said this. He said, millionaires don't care about astrology, billionaires do. And they don't just care about it, everything is based around it. And their principal deities are the ones that they base everything around. And it's very much encoded in almost all of these big meta scripted plays and these characters. For example, Elon Musk is clearly associated with Mars, as in he's taking us to Mars. But if you look at his world stage character, he's been conflated with Tony Stark, as in Iron Man. Well, if you look at the symbolism of Mars, it's associated with the color red, iron, the falcon headed counterpart to Mars, which is Horus, and it's associated with the metal iron. Iron Man, red. Musk taking us to Mars, his red suit. It's also associated with the ram. That's why Musk's red armored suit has a ram on it. Iron, of course, is the planetary or the metal associated with this planet. In the House of Thrones, I'm sorry, the Game of Thrones has the House of Stark. And that's like Tony Stark. It's an interesting connection because they have an iron throne. But you'll find if you go through it, there's a consistency to their symbolic system. Rihanna, of course, being a goddess incarnate. But Musk, yeah, Musk is definitely a Martian. It's the best way to explain it. All right, let's continue through the comments. Cupstar says Big Pharma sells the red pills and the blue pills. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something else to consider, too. We talk about the monolithic media, but we also ought to look at the monolithic control over the mind as it also pertains to drugs. And I was thinking about LSD and expanded states of consciousness because, your consciousness is a filter. You're getting so much perceptual material that you would have to narrow it down. Otherwise, you'd be complete schizo. You would not be able to maintain a continuity of thought if you didn't have consciousness there, your ego as a filter to filter out what's extraneous, unnecessary, etc. So it's primarily a filter. But when you take LSD, the idea is it obliterates the ego. Your filter's gone. Now everything just comes in unabated. And this is what I think about the internet and our hyper-mediated world. I think that we're surrounded by so much sensory information. Now we all have thousands of friends when physically that wouldn't be possible were it not for the internet. I think we're so inundated with so many narratives and stories and memes and ideas that I think that reality has become psychedelic. That if you don't narrow your focus, you're basically tripping. And most people are already tripping. You don't even need drugs. You just need to believe what you see on the TV. Enter that state of suspended disbelief. The American dream became an American acid trip, if it wasn't already one, if it wasn't designed to be that way. Rocco says Elon von Braun. Oh, yes. And, Pete Shea came up with this connection. Jules Verne, who came up with the moon landing concept, which was put into motion by Wernher von Braun. But he was making a phonetic connection between Jules Verne, Wernher von Braun. Very interesting. Anyway, the phone battery is dropping off here, and I don't have an extra outlet. So this is a successful test. Thank you all for joining. We've been here for a little bit over an hour. If you missed it, it's going to go into the archives, Infinite Plane Radio, as normal. And the 24/7 audio is going to stay on. And if you're not there, just go to infiniteplane.live. This was a test, but I'm going to work on a more regular schedule.